The Korean billionaire CEO with his mistress ignored his wife's call. Part 2. 3 years can change everything or nothing at all. 3 years ago, Jin-ho Park was a man who measured his worth in billions and buildings. A man who barely noticed as his wife faded like a ghost in their cold penthouse. 3 years ago, Mi-suk lay dying in a rural hospital, her cancer a death sentence. Her husband finally awakened to his catastrophic failure as a human being. 3 years ago, their story should have ended. But life, unlike business, sometimes offers second chances to those who don't deserve them. The morning sun bathes their Hanok house in golden light, the traditional curved roof catching the dawn's first rays as they spill across Jumunjin's coastline. Inside, Mi-suk sits by the window, her cello resting against her shoulder, her bow drawing melodies from strings that once went silent for 20 years. Her hair has grown back since the chemotherapy, shorter now, streaked with silver that wasn't there before. Her body, once ravaged by cancer, has found a fragile equilibrium. The doctors call it a miracle, a remission no one expected. Jin-ho calls it a gift he didn't earn. The man who enters the room bearing tea is not the same Jin-ho Park who once ruled Seoul's financial district with cold precision. This man's expensive suits gather dust in a closet. His phone rarely rings with business calls. The empire he built continues without him, managed by executives he barely speaks to. He visits Seoul only when necessary for the foundation bearing his wife's name. A foundation that funds cancer research and music therapy programs across Asia. They have rebuilt something between them in this house by the sea. Not what they had 20 years ago, that youthful passion is gone forever, but something perhaps more valuable. Honesty, presence. The quiet recognition of time's precious nature. Jin-ho has learned to listen when Mi-suk speaks. Mi-suk has learned to believe when Jin-ho promises. Each day feels like borrowed time, a gift neither takes for granted. This morning, like many mornings, Jin-ho sits beside his wife as she practices, turning pages of music she no longer truly needs, simply for the pleasure of being useful to her. Later, her students will arrive. Local children who come to learn from the famous cellist who once played in concert halls across Asia. Some show real promise. All receive her patient attention, her gentle correction. The music that cancer nearly silenced now fills their home from dawn until dusk. How sweet their redemption seems. How complete their second chance appears. How naive to believe that karma's accounts could be settled so easily, with only 3 years of atonement for 2 decades of cruelty. The universe doesn't forget. The universe doesn't forgive. The universe merely waits for the perfect moment to collect what it's owed. That moment arrives with the morning post. A plain manila envelope. No return address. No distinctive markings. Just Mi-suk's name written in precise, clinical handwriting. Jin-ho brings it to her without suspicion, his mind already on the day ahead. A call with the foundation, plans for the small garden they're planting, perhaps a walk along the shore if Mi-suk's strength permits. Mi-suk opens the envelope as Jin-ho prepares lunch in their small kitchen. Her sharp intake of breath catches his attention. Her suddenly pale face turns his mild concern to alarm. He crosses the room quickly, kneels beside her chair, sees the papers trembling in her hands. Medical charts, test results, terminology he's learned to dread during their cancer journey. "What is it?" he asks, though part of him already knows. Part of him has been waiting for this moment, has never truly believed they deserved their happiness. The cancer has returned. Not just returned, exploded through her body with a vengeance no treatment could hope to contain. Metastasized to her liver, her bones, her brain. Detailed scans show the progression with merciless clarity. Projections estimate weeks, not months, perhaps days. But it's not the diagnosis that freezes Jin-ho's blood. It's the yellow sticky note attached to the final page. "You destroyed my family, Park. Now I control whether your wife lives or dies. Dr. Sung-min Kong." The name strikes Jin-ho like a physical blow. Kong, the brilliant oncologist whose research institute Jin-ho systematically dismantled 12 years ago. The man whose groundbreaking cancer treatment protocols Jin-ho buried under litigation and regulatory challenges. the competitor whose patents Jinho stole through corporate espionage and bribed officials. The rival he crushed without mercy or second thought. The man whose wife died of the exact same cancer now killing Misuk. Died while Kang fought desperately to save his institute, his research, his life's work from Jinho's relentless attacks. Jinho had forgotten Kang existed. Had never connected his wife's cancer to the treatment he'd helped destroy. Had never imagined his past sins would circle back with such perfect, poetic vengeance. But Kang hadn't forgotten. Kang had spent 12 years rebuilding from nothing, working in obscurity, perfecting the treatment protocols Jinho had tried to steal. And now, according to the detailed research papers included in the package, Kang had developed the only experimental treatment that might save Misuk from the aggressive cancer consuming her body. A treatment he would never share with the man who destroyed his life. A treatment he dangles like bait, just to ensure Jinho understands exactly who controls Misuk's fate. A treatment that represents Jinho's only hope and his most perfect punishment. The past we try to bury has a way of resurfacing when we least expect it. Hit that subscribe button now if you've ever wondered what happens when karma finally collects its debt. Drop a like if you're ready to see how far Jinho will go to save the woman he almost lost once before. The price of redemption is about to get much higher. Misuk's decline happens with brutal swiftness. Within days of receiving Kang's package, she can barely rise from bed without assistance. The pain medications that once controlled her symptoms now barely take the edge off. Her cello sits untouched in the corner of their bedroom, a silent witness to her suffering. The students stop coming. The music stops playing. The fragile peace they built crumbles beneath the weight of returning illness and revealed secrets. Jinho makes the first obvious move, throws money at the problem. He contacts Kang's research institute, offers to fund their work for decades. Offers millions, billions, blank checks. The response comes back with clinical coldness. Dr. Kang is not accepting new patients at this time, especially not anyone connected to Jinho Park. The institute has other priorities. Other patients more deserving of their limited resources. Next, Jinho leverages his remaining connections in Seoul's business world. Calls in favors. Applies pressure through mutual acquaintances. Attempts to access Kang's research through backdoor channels. Every approach meets the same wall of rejection. Kang has anticipated each move, closed each potential path. He has spent 12 years preparing for this moment, ensuring Jinho would have no choice but to approach him directly, on his knees, begging for the life of his wife. As Misuk weakens, Jinho grows desperate. The gentle, reformed man who spent 3 years atoning for his past begins to fade. In his place, the cold, calculating strategist reemerges. The businessman who built an empire by destroying competitors, the shark who never lost a fight because he never recognized any rules of engagement except victory at all costs. He returns to Seoul for the first time in months, reactivates his executive office at Park Tower. The familiar surroundings feel both foreign and dangerously comfortable, like an addiction he thought he'd conquered, now beckoning him back with promises of power. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he once ruled. The sleek furnishings designed to intimidate rather than welcome. The ghost of his former self lurking in every corner, whispering that mercy is weakness, that only strength will save Misuk now. His old assistant has been replaced, but the new one eyes him with the same wary respect that everyone at Park Industries once showed. Respect born not of admiration but of fear. Fear of the man Jinho used to be. Fear of the man he might become again. For 3 days, Jinho works phones and connections tirelessly. He deploys corporate investigators to dig into Kang's personal and professional life, seeking any leverage they might use against the doctor. He has his legal team searching for vulnerabilities in Kang's patents, any technicality that might force him to share his research. He hires away 2 researchers from Kang's institute with promises of unlimited funding and protected authorship. He becomes hour by hour the man he once was, calculating, relentless, viewing human beings as means to an end. The man Misuk had forgiven. The man he had promised never to be again. On the 4th day, as reports come in showing Misuk's condition deteriorating rapidly, Jin-ho receives an unexpected visitor. Soo-min enters his office without knocking, as confident and beautiful as the day he fired her 3 years ago. The woman who had been his mistress while Mi-suk called desperately from a pool of her own blood. The woman who had enabled his worst instincts, who had made it easy for him to ignore his wife, who had been complicit in his moral collapse. "You look terrible," she says without preamble, settling into the chair across from his desk as though no time has passed. "Being a devoted husband has aged you 20 years. Jin-ho should throw her out." The Jin-ho who held Mi-suk through chemotherapy, who learned to cook for her, who sat beside her hospital bed for months. That Jin-ho would never allow Soo-min back into his life. But that Jin-ho is fading, replaced by a desperate man who recognizes in Soo-min's smile a willingness to cross lines he once crossed without hesitation. "Mi-suk is dying," he says, his voice flat. "I know. I still have friends in your company. I know about Kong and his treatment protocol. I know he's refusing to help her." Soo-min leans forward, her perfume, the same jasmine scent she wore 3 years ago, drifting across the desk. "I also know people who can help you access his research without his permission." Industrial espionage. Jin-ho translates. Soo-min shrugs elegantly. "Call it what you want. If his treatment can save Mi-suk, does it matter how you get it?" The Jin-ho Park I knew wouldn't hesitate to take what he needed. And for a brief, terrible moment it does feel like old times. The familiar rush of plotting a corporate attack. The addictive sense of control. The certainty that, with enough pressure, any opponent would break. The simplicity of a world divided into winners and losers, predators and prey. A world Jin-ho had once ruled before he understood the true cost of such dominance. "I can make the arrangements," Soo-min continues, mistaking his silence for agreement. "Just like I used to. No one will ever know. You'll have his research protocols within 48 hours. You can take them anywhere in the world, have another doctor administer the treatment. Mi-suk never needs to know how you got it." Jin-ho stares at her, seeing not just Soo-min but his own reflection in her calculating eyes. The man he's becoming again. The monster he thought he'd killed. That's how Mi-suk finds them when she appears in his office doorway. Jin-ho and Soo-min, heads bent together over strategy documents. The ghost of his past transgressions standing close enough to resurrect every reason Mi-suk had to fear the man Jin-ho was becoming again. She doesn't make a scene, doesn't cry or scream or demand explanations. She simply stands there, leaning heavily on a cane, her face gaunt from renewed cancer and pain medications, her eyes moving from Jin-ho to Soo-min and back again, her silence more damning than any accusation. "You promised," she says finally, her voice barely audible. "You promised you wouldn't become him again. When desperate, we often return to what we know best, even our worst habits. Have you ever been tempted to become your old self in a crisis? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. If the story of redemption tested by fire resonates with you, make sure you've hit that like button. We're just getting to the moment that will define Jin-ho's soul forever." Mi-suk's appearance in his office doorway should have been Jin-ho's wake-up call. The shock of seeing his dying wife confronted with his backslide into old patterns should have jolted him back to the man he'd fought to become. Instead, it hardened something inside him. Not against Mi-suk, never against her, but against the world that threatens to take her from him again. Against Kong, who holds her life hostage to satisfy his vengeance. Against a universe that demands more penance than Jin-ho has already paid. "I'll save you," he tells Mi-suk that night as she lies in their hotel suite. The Seoul skyline glittering beyond the windows, so far from their peaceful home by the sea. "Whatever it takes." "Not whatever it takes," Mi-suk corrects him weakly. "Not if it costs you your soul. Not if it makes you him again." But Jin-ho is already formulating his most ruthless plan yet. Soo-min's suggestion of industrial espionage seems amateur compared to what he's now considering. Why steal research when you can steal the entire institute? Why beg for treatment when you can seize control and force access? Why play by rules when the stakes are Mi-suk's life? The hostile takeover plan comes together with frightening speed. Legal documents prepared, financing secured through personal funds, proxies ready to make their moves. Jin-ho will destroy Kang's institute just as he destroyed his research company 12 years ago. He will strip Kang of control, of dignity, of everything he's rebuilt from the ashes of Jin-ho's first attack. He will take the treatment by force and save Mi-suk, even if it means becoming the villain in their story once again. One call will launch the process that will seize control of Kang's life's work for the second time. Jin-ho's finger hovers over the phone button. The old Jin-ho, the ruthless CEO who crushed Kang once before, screams at him to press it, to win at any cost, to save Mi-suk by any means necessary. What is another destroyed life compared to saving his wife? What does it matter if he becomes a monster again if it means Mi-suk will live? What is his soul worth if not exchanged for her survival? But a smaller voice cuts through the noise. Mi-suk's voice from 3 years ago, when he first began to understand the depth of his failure as a husband. Some things can't be fixed with money, Jin-ho. Mi-suk's voice from their vow renewal ceremony. I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because forgiveness isn't earned. It's given. Mi-suk's voice just yesterday. Not whatever it takes. Not if it costs you your soul. Jin-ho stares at his phone, at the number that would set in motion the destruction of Dr. Kang for the second time in one lifetime. He stares at the architectural model of Park Tower visible through his office window, the monument to ambition that nearly cost him everything that truly mattered. And he makes his choice. The next morning, Jin-ho drives alone to Kang's private residence, a modernist home overlooking the Han River on Seoul's outskirts. No lawyers, no security, no corporate armor, just a husband desperate to save his wife, finally ready to face the consequences of his past. Kang's security initially refuses him entry, but Jin-ho remains at the gate for hours, through rain that soaks him to the skin, through wind that cuts like remembrance. No umbrella, no shelter, no reprieve. Just a man standing exposed to the elements, as vulnerable as he had once made others feel. When Kang finally allows him in, perhaps out of curiosity, perhaps out of desire to witness his enemy's humiliation up close, Jin-ho enters not as a billionaire CEO but as a supplicant, penitent, a husband on his knees. Kang's home is both coldly beautiful and deeply personal. Minimalist architecture framing family photographs. Sterile corridors opening to unexpected warmth. The fortress of a man who had rebuilt himself from ashes, who had channeled grief into purpose, rage into healing. He leads Jin-ho through the house without speaking, finally stopping at a door that clearly leads to private quarters. You should see what you're asking me to forgive, Kang says, opening the door. The room beyond is a shrine, a woman's bedroom preserved exactly as it must have been 12 years ago, when Ji-young Kang last slept there. Photographs cover one wall, a beautiful woman in her 30s, smiling despite the clear signs of illness in her later pictures. Ji-young at her medical school graduation. Ji-young with Kang on their wedding day. Ji-young in a hospital bed, still trying to smile even as cancer consumed her. But most devastating is the small wooden table in the corner, covered with research papers. A workspace frozen in time, notes in Ji-young's handwriting about the very cancer treatment Kang would perfect years later. Too late for her. Too late because of Jin-ho's ruthless takeover that kept Kang fighting for his company instead of focusing on saving his wife. She was helping me develop the treatment, Kang says, his voice altered by proximity to his most private grief. She was a brilliant oncologist herself. The theoretical framework was mostly hers. I've spent 12 years completing what she started. Jin-ho feels physical pain as the weight of what he had done truly hits him for the first time. Not just a corporate takeover. Not just a business rivalry. His actions had separated a husband from his dying wife during her final days. Had robbed Ji-young of her last chance at the treatment that might have saved her. Had destroyed not just a company but a family, a future, a love story that should have continued for decades. I had no idea, Jin-ho whispers, though he knows the words are inadequate. Of course you didn't, Kang replies coldly. People like you never do. You see balance sheets, not human beings. You see obstacles, not lives. You see companies to acquire, not dreams to destroy. Jin-ho doesn't argue, doesn't defend, doesn't make excuses about the man he used to be. I took everything from you, he says simply. I didn't know about your wife. I didn't know you were developing the treatment for her. But that doesn't matter. I didn't care enough to know. I didn't consider for one moment the human cost of what I was doing. Kong says nothing. His silence weighted with 12 years of grief, of rage, of purpose forged in the crucible of loss. I won't ask you to forgive me, Jin-ho continues. What I did is beyond forgiveness. But I'm not here as the man who destroyed your company. I'm here as a husband begging for his wife's life. Not offering money or deals or threats. Just the truth. The acknowledgement of my crime against you and Ji-young. The recognition that I have no right to ask anything of you, but still must ask. Not for myself, but for Mi-suk, who never harmed anyone, who deserves a future that my actions may have stolen from her. Kong turns away, touching a photograph of his wife taken on what must have been near the end. Thin but smiling, her love for the photographer evident despite her suffering. A woman fighting a battle. Whirled around to find 2 security guards, men whose salaries he signed, watching him with professional detachment. Open this elevator, Maxwell demanded. The system is malfunctioning. It's not a malfunction, sir, the taller guard replied. We've been instructed to escort you to the boardroom. Visitor access only. Visitor? This is MY building. This way, sir. They flanked him, effectively marching him to the service elevator. The humiliation burned like acid in his throat. Maxwell Thorne, forced to use the service entrance of his own corporate headquarters. When the elevator opened on the executive floor, the normal buzz of activity was replaced by unnatural quiet. Employees kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact as he passed. Many of these same people had laughed at his jokes, complimented his leadership, and competed for his approval just yesterday. Now they couldn't look at him. The double doors of the boardroom were closed, but he could see silhouettes moving behind the frosted glass. He pushed past the guards and flung the doors open. The boardroom table was fully occupied. The entire board of directors, people Maxwell had charmed, bullied, and manipulated for years, sat in uncomfortable silence, eyes averted. At the head of the table, his seat, sat Iris. She wore a tailored charcoal suit now, her hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. She looked completely at home in the leather chair, reviewing documents with focused attention. To her right sat Jonathan Blackwell, examining financial projections with a critical eye. To her left was Regina, typing notes on a tablet. Standing awkwardly in the corner was Richard Palmer, looking pale and defeated. You're in my chair, Maxwell growled, striding forward. I'm in the chairperson's seat, Iris corrected without looking up. And as representative of the majority shareholders, it's now my seat. You can't just take over. I have contracts, executive protections. Regina finally looked up from her tablet. Article 12, Section B of your employment agreement. The CEO may be removed immediately and without severance in the event of gross misconduct or criminal activity. I haven't done anything criminal, Maxwell lied, his eyes darting to Richard. Iris slid a thick folder across the polished mahogany. Richard has provided us with everything, Maxwell. The company funds you diverted to renovate your vacation house in the Hamptons. The corporate jet flights to Paris listed as client development when you were actually meeting Natalie. The jewelry receipts categorized as office supplies. Richard stepped forward. I'm sorry, Max. Their forensic accounting team found everything in under an hour. They offered immunity if I cooperated. Maxwell felt the floor tilt beneath him. So what? You fire me. I still own 40% of this company. Jonathan Blackwell finally looked up, removing his reading glasses with deliberate slowness. Actually, you don't. You leveraged your shares 3 years ago to cover your gambling losses in Macau. You used your equity as collateral for loans from Hemisphere Financial. Maxwell's blood turned to ice. Hemisphere Financial is a subsidiary of Blackwell Banking. Jonathan continued. Since you've defaulted on your last 4 payments, we've foreclosed on the collateral as of this morning. Your shares now belong to us. Maxwell stumbled backward, gripping a chair for support. This is a setup. You planned this. I didn't trap you, Maxwell. Iris stood and walked around the table until she was facing him directly. I supported you. I covered your mistakes. I used my own dividends to patch the holes you were punching in the company finances because I wanted to believe you were stressed, not corrupt. Her voice grew softer, but somehow more devastating. But then last week at breakfast, you looked me in the eye and told me I was dead weight. You said I was nothing but a pretty ornament, who contributed nothing to your success. Iris straightened her shoulders. You wanted to fly solo, Maxwell? Fine. But I'm taking back the wings I bought you. She turned to the board. I call for a vote to remove Maxwell Thorne as CEO, effective immediately, pending investigation into financial misconduct. Seconded, said a board member Maxwell had considered a friend. All in favor? Every hand in the room rose, including Richard's. Motion carried, Iris stated. She nodded to the security guards. Please escort Mr. Thorne from the premises. His personal effects will be boxed and delivered to wherever he ends up. Iris, wait. Maxwell pleaded, desperation finally cracking his arrogance. He reached for her arm. The guard stepped between them instantly. Don't touch her, sir. Iris, please. We can talk about this. I made mistakes. I was stressed. But I love you. Iris studied him, and for a moment, Maxwell saw a flash of the woman who had stood by him for 8 years. But then her eyes hardened with resolve. You don't love me, Maxwell, she said quietly. You loved that I made you feel powerful. There's a difference. She turned away. Goodbye. The sidewalk outside Thorne Innovation Group headquarters felt alien to Maxwell. For 8 years, he had entered and exited through the private executive garage in his luxury vehicles. Now he stood on the concrete like a common pedestrian, clutching his phone and wallet, the only possessions he had left. He tried his credit cards. All declined. He checked his bank accounts. All frozen. With the last $20 in his wallet, he took a taxi to the Four Seasons, where Natalie was waiting in the suite he'd reserved for their afternoon rendezvous. Max! Natalie exclaimed when he burst through the door. You look terrible. What happened? They knew everything? Maxwell gasped, pacing the luxurious room like a caged animal. Iris isn't who she pretended to be. She's a Blackwell. Her family owns half the eastern seaboard. A Blackwell? Natalie's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. As in shipping, banking, real estate Blackwells. Yes, they ambushed me. They took the company, froze the accounts, everything. He grabbed her shoulders. But we can fix this. You have savings, right? We can go somewhere, start over. I have contacts. I can rebuild. Natalie stared at him. Slowly, she removed his hands from her shoulders and took a step back. You lost the company? She asked, her voice dangerously calm. They stole it, but I'll get it back. I just need you to help me weather this storm. Natalie's laugh was cold, brittle. Weather this storm? Max, do you know why I'm with you? Because we connect on a deeper level, Maxwell said automatically. I'm with you because you bought me a Cartier necklace last month. I'm with you because you promised me the VP of marketing position. She looked him up and down with clinical detachment. I'm with you because you're a winner. But right now, you look like a loser. She walked to the bed and picked up her designer handbag. And I don't date losers. Natalie, please. You can't leave me. Not now. She paused at the door. Actually, Philip from Bergen Capital has been texting me for weeks. I think I'll give him a call. Her smile was razor sharp. Don't contact me, Max. It's bad for my personal brand. The door slammed, leaving Maxwell alone in the silence of a hotel room he could no longer afford. A knock made him jump. For a wild moment, he thought Natalie had returned. He rushed to open the door. It wasn't Natalie. It was Regina Blackwell Morrison, flanked by 2 police officers. "Mr. Thorne," Regina said, her voice icily professional. She held out a manila envelope. "This is a subpoena and an arrest warrant." "Arrest warrant?" Maxwell whispered. "Grand larceny, wire fraud, embezzlement." The forensic audit revealed approximately $7 million missing from corporate accounts over the past 3 years. The taller police officer stepped forward. "Maxwell Thorne, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Maxwell's world collapsed entirely. "This can't be happening." "It's very real," Regina replied, watching impassively as the officers read him his rights. "Oh, and the hotel manager asked me to inform you that your credit cards have been declined. They'll be holding your luggage until payment is arranged." "I have nothing," Maxwell whispered as he was led down the hallway. Regina watched him go, then pulled out her phone and dialed. "It's done, Father. Tell Iris she can come home now. The situation has been handled. Have you ever seen someone get exactly what they deserved? Hit that like button if you're enjoying this justice being served. And if you're waiting for the finale of this incredible story, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you never miss our uploads." 6 weeks later, Maxwell Thorne sat in a Spartan visitation room at the Metropolitan Detention Center, wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He had lost 15 pounds since his arrest. His normally immaculate hair was unkempt, his face unshaven. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Across from him sat his new attorney, Gary Finkel, a public defender who looked almost as tired as Maxwell felt. "Give me the straight story," Gary said, opening a well-worn legal pad. "How bad is it?" Maxwell laughed hollowly. "How bad? I'm facing 15 years for embezzlement and fraud. My company's gone. My money's gone. My reputation's gone. The prosecution is offering a deal," Gary said. 5 years if you plead guilty to all charges and agree to full restitution." "Restitution?" Maxwell scoffed. "They want me to pay back $7 million when I don't even have $700 to my name." "The Blackwells are insisting on it," Gary replied. "Either you agree to work off the debt for the rest of your life, or you go to trial and risk the maximum sentence." Maxwell put his head in his hands. "This can't be happening. 3 months ago I was on the cover of Business Week. Now I'm negotiating how long I'll spend in prison." "Have you had any contact with your wife?" Gary asked. Maxwell looked up sharply. "Ex-wife. The divorce was finalized last week. She didn't even show up, just sent her sister with the paperwork." He paused, his expression darkening. "And no, she hasn't visited, called, or written. But she did send me this." He pulled a folded newspaper clipping from his pocket and slid it across the table. It was a feature from the Wall Street Journal's business section. The headline read, "Blackwell Scion revitalizes tech firm. Iris Blackwell transforms troubled Thorne innovation into industry leader." The accompanying photo showed Iris elegant, poised, powerful, standing in front of the company headquarters, which now bore a new sign, Blackwell Technology Solutions. "She renamed it," Maxwell said bitterly. 8 years of my life, erased in 6 weeks. "The article mentions you," Gary noted, scanning the text. "Yeah. I'm the disgraced former CEO who mismanaged company resources and betrayed stakeholder trust." Maxwell's voice cracked. "I built that company from nothing. With her money," Gary reminded him gently. "Look, Max, I need you to understand your position clearly. The evidence against you is overwhelming. The forensic accountants found everything, the diverted funds, the falsified reports, the shell companies. Your CFO has turned state's evidence. Your mistress gave an exclusive interview to the New York Times calling you, and I quote, a narcissist who valued status over substance." Maxwell winced. "She would know. She left me the second I had nothing left to give her." "The plea deal is your best option," Gary concluded. 5 years. With good behavior, you could be out in 3. "And then what?" Maxwell asked, a hollow emptiness in his voice. I'll be 48 with a felony record, no assets, and a $7 million debt. Gary had no answer for that. Maxwell stared at the photo of Iris in the newspaper. You know what the worst part is? He said quietly. She was brilliant all along. All those nights she helped me with strategy, all those subtle suggestions that turned into our most profitable products. That wasn't luck. That was a Blackwell education and inherited business instinct. He traced her image with his finger. She dumbed herself down for me, made herself smaller so I could feel bigger. And I was too blind to see it. Do you want me to try to get a message to her? Gary offered. Maxwell considered this for a long moment. No, he finally said. What could I possibly say? Sorry I treated you like furniture while you were secretly financing my success. He folded the newspaper clipping and put it back in his pocket. Tell the DA I'll take the deal. For months later, Iris Blackwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new office, watching the sunset paint Manhattan in gold and crimson. The plaque on the door read, Iris Blackwell, Chief Executive Officer. Under her leadership, Thorne Innovation Group, now renamed Blackwell Technology Solutions, had already recovered from Maxwell's mismanagement, with stock prices climbing steadily. The transition hadn't been easy. When news broke that Maxwell Thorne had been arrested for embezzlement and that his quiet wife was actually Iris Blackwell, the business world had nearly imploded with gossip. For 2 weeks, Iris couldn't open a newspaper or turn on a television without seeing her face. The headlines ranged from salacious, Billionaire's secret identity revealed in divorce court drama, to admiring how Iris Blackwell played the long game. What none of the headlines captured was the complexity of her emotions. Despite Maxwell's betrayal, despite the years of increasingly subtle put-downs and emotional neglect, despite his attempt to leave her penniless, she had loved him once. Perhaps part of her always would love the man she thought he could become. But that man had never existed. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Come in, she called. Jonathan Blackwell entered, looking pleased. The board meeting went well. Your projections for the next quarter impressed even the most skeptical members. Iris smiled. I learned a lot watching Maxwell all those years. Mostly what not to do. Jonathan studied his daughter with quiet pride. You know, you could have exposed him at any time. Why did you wait 8 years? Iris turned back to the window. I wanted to believe in him. I wanted to believe that the man I fell in love with was real, that his ambition was matched by integrity. She sighed softly. And truthfully, I needed to prove something to myself, that I could survive without the Blackwell name protecting me. And did you? Prove it to yourself. I did more than survive, Dad. Iris turned to face her father. I discovered my own strength. It took Maxwell's betrayal to show me what I'm truly capable of. She thought about the early days of their marriage, how she had deliberately dimmed her light to make him shine brighter, how she had pretended not to understand complex financial strategies she'd mastered at 16, how she had watched him take credit for her ideas in meetings, saying nothing because she wanted him to feel successful. The irony, she said quietly, is that I believed I was helping him by hiding who I really was. I thought my strength would threaten his. But real partnerships don't work that way, do they? Jonathan smiled. I never doubted it. Blackwells aren't made by their circumstances. We're made by how we respond to them. Iris nodded, then glanced at her watch. I should go. I have dinner plans. Business or pleasure? Jonathan asked with a raised eyebrow. Actually, it's a date. Iris smiled, a genuine warmth reaching her eyes for the first time in months. With someone who knew me as Iris Sullivan first and seems quite unfazed by discovering I'm a Blackwell. Anyone I know? Thomas Patel. The public defender? Jonathan looked surprised. Former public defender. He's joining the pro bono department at Morrison International next month. Iris gathered her coat and bag. He stood by me when he thought I had nothing. That tells me everything I need to know about his character. She remembered the moment in the courthouse when Thomas had learned who she really was. Unlike Maxwell, whose face had shown shock followed by calculation, Thomas had simply looked relieved not for himself, but for her. Later, he'd apologized for not being a better advocate. "I really thought they were going to destroy you," he'd admitted. "But you stayed anyway," she'd pointed out. "You didn't abandon me when it looked hopeless." That, more than anything, had touched her. Jonathan nodded approvingly. Good foundations matter in relationships as much as in buildings. As they walked out together, Iris paused at the door to her office. The office that had once been Maxwell's shrine to his own ego, now transformed into a space of genuine creation and leadership. "You know what Maxwell never understood, Dad?" she said quietly. "True power isn't about what you take from others. It's about what you create together." She switched off the light, closing the door on the past and stepping confidently toward her future. Meanwhile, in a federal prison in upstate New York, Maxwell Thorne sat on his narrow bunk, a worn photograph in his hands. It was from their 3rd anniversary, Iris smiling up at him with genuine love, her arms around his waist, his around her shoulders. They looked happy. He had been happy, though he hadn't appreciated it then. His cellmate, an older man serving time for tax evasion, looked over curiously. "That your wife?" "Ex-wife," Maxwell corrected. "The woman I lost everything for." "Pretty lady," the cellmate observed. "What happened?" Maxwell stared at the photo for a long moment. "I thought power meant having people fear you, envy you, need you. I wanted to be irreplaceable." He shook his head slowly. "But real power is what she had, the ability to lift others up instead of tearing them down. The strength to be vulnerable. The wisdom to know when to fight and when to walk away." He carefully tucked the photograph under his pillow. "She was the most powerful person I've ever met. And I never even knew it until she was gone." There's a lesson in Maxwell and Iris's story that goes beyond the satisfying justice of seeing an arrogant man get his comeuppance. It's about the nature of true power and how easily we can mistake its shadow for its substance. Maxwell believed power came from dominance, from controlling others, from being feared and envied. He built his identity on the crumbling foundation of external validation. When that foundation inevitably collapsed, he had nothing left. Iris understood that real power comes from within, from knowing your worth, from having integrity, from building rather than breaking. She allowed herself to be underestimated not because she was weak, but because she was secure enough in herself to play the long game. Sometimes in life, we find ourselves standing in Maxwell's shoes, chasing status and validation at the expense of what truly matters. Sometimes we find ourselves in Iris's position, being underestimated, overlooked, or taken for granted. The question we must ask ourselves is, when our moment of truth comes, will we crumble like Maxwell, or will we rise with dignity like Iris? If you've enjoyed this story of justice served, hit that like button right now. It helps our channel reach more people who love these powerful stories. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll never miss our next video. What did you think of Iris's revenge? Was it justice served? Or did Maxwell deserve worse? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, remember,